Hello friends, I hope you all are doing well. I, CA Pujan Kapadia, welcome you all on my today's lecture of the subject Accountancy and Taxation. Friends, as you are aware, we have started with the topic of basic concepts of income tax, under which I have already covered 3 lectures. Today, we are going to deal with the next one. But before starting, let's take a recap on all the things that we have covered till date. The first point that I have explained to you is what is direct tax and what is indirect tax, under which we understood if the burden cannot be shifted, that is, the person who is paying the tax to the government has to bear the burden, then it is known as direct tax. But when it is indirect tax, when the burden can be shifted, like GST. Second we did was income. Three important points to remember in this. Your return should be in monetary terms. Second, you should be periodically receiving that particular thing. And last is, it should be from a definite source. Next, we did with the assessee. The spelling again is important. A-S-S-E-S-S-E-E. Who is an assessee? There were 5 different points. But if I want to say in crux, any person who is liable to pay anything, whether in form of income tax, in form of interest, in form of penalty, any amount to the income tax department under Income Tax Act 1961, is supposed to be known as assessee. Moving ahead, we understood what is previous year and what is assessment year. The current financial year is known as previous year, and the year following the current financial year is known as assessment year. Moving ahead, we have dealt with the technical definition of what is assessment year and what is previous year. Two things to remember: if there is a newly set up business, then your previous year begins on the date of commencement of your business. I have given you the example. If I start my business from 1st July 2020, my previous year is from 1st July 2020 to 31st March 2021. Second point is, if your income is from a source which is not identifiable, not traceable. For example, I gave you the example of rupees 1 lakh credited to my bank account. I am not knowing from where this amount has come from. So the year in which authority determines the exact source of this particular income, that particular year will be termed as its previous year. So for example, income tax authority come to know about the source of income in the year 2024-25, then the year 2024-25 will be considered as the previous year for that rupees 1 lakh. Then we had a general rule that income of previous year is assessed in assessment year. That is, the income that I am earning in previous year, I need to pay tax on the same income in the assessment year. But there were certain exceptions which says the income of previous year will be taxed in previous year itself. So the 5 points are written over here. Moving ahead, we have covered the definition and the main short question from this chapter of person. We have studied different categories of person, not repeating entire thing again, but very quickly let's take a view. First was individual, natural person, that is a living person like you, me. Second is HUF, important word with family. Third is company, limited, private limited. Fourth is partnership firm, measures. Fifth is AOP, that is formed voluntarily. But any person can be its member, and it is formed for a common purpose. Sixth is BOI, that is body of individual. It is formed under any law in force at the time being. Second is any individual can be its member. So other people cannot be its member. A simple example which is being asked repeatedly is ATIRA is an example of BOI, that is body of individuals. Next point is local authority. I told you certain semi-government organizations like municipal corporations. In Surat, we have SMC, and it is going to be the example of local authority. Any kind of Nagarpalika is again going to be the part of local authority. The last part is artificial juridical person, in which all the universities, schools, colleges are going to be the part of particular thing. Then we have covered the next topic that was in the last lecture. What is dividend? In this topic, I have explained you anything that is being paid to the shareholders out of the profit is known as dividend. That is, out of the accumulated profit is an important word over here. Further, the definition had 5 different clauses under which we had if anything is released from the company's asset, anything being paid to the preference shareholders, anything received immediately before liquidation, anything received as a reduction of capital, and the last one, deemed dividend, which said that, for example, I'm not paying anything from the profit that I have earned. But what I'm doing, I'm giving loan or advances to the specified shareholders. If this is the case, it is also to be considered as a dividend under section 2, subsection 22, clause E. Next we take it was casual income. Any income which is an unexpected, unforeseen, non-recurring, and which is not received from a regular source is supposed to be known as casual income. Anything which I am earning from lotteries, puzzles, races, card games, or gambling. The thing that we have learned in the last lecture is such income are treated separately in Income Tax Act 1961 and are taxable at a flat rate of 30%. I gave you the example. I am having my salary income of 3 lakh rupees and I am earning 2 lakh rupees from a lottery. Then I am going to calculate tax at a regular basis on the income of rupees 3 lakh. But for the rupees 2 lakh, I am straight away going to tax it at 30%. That is 2 lakh ka 30%. Answer is 60,000. What is going to be my tax liability? 60,000 rupees. Last point was you cannot claim deduction of any expenditure from the casual income. The next topic that we started in the last lecture was agricultural income. I told you guys this is also one of the most important short note which is likely to be asked in your examination. So we need to learn this topic in a deep manner. Agricultural income is defined under section 2, subsection 1, capital A. Broadly classifying, this income includes three important points. First is rent or revenue. I am going to deal with this entire topic in detail once again so that you do not find any kind of hesitation at the time of memorizing or writing this particular question. So the first thing which is mentioned over here is rent or revenue. If I am having an agricultural land in India and I am earning any kind of rent by let out that land or by any kind of revenue out of that particular land, it will be taxed as an agriculture income under the point number 1. Second point is income derived from such land through if I'm undertaking any of these three activities. First is cultivation, if I'm growing something. Second is processing of agricultural produce. I told you sugarcane has been grown by me in my farm, but it needs to be processed before being selling it to the factory. As a result of which, if I'm earning any kind of income out of processing of agricultural produce, it is also going to be the part of this particular point. And last is sale of any agri produce by the cultivator or the receiver of renting kind. That is, if I am cultivating something, I am known as cultivator. If I have rented my agricultural premises to someone else who is doing farming but is giving something to me again, then I am the person who is known as receiver of renting kind. In any of the case, if I am earning anything by selling agricultural produce, it is going to be the part of this particular point. That is point number 2. And the third part that we have covered, which was bit in detail, certain conditions are applied to it. That is income derived from a building. That is any kind of farmhouse you are having on the agricultural land, on in exact vicinity with the agricultural land. Let's see the condition. First is the building should be occupied by the cultivator. That is the person who is farming should be in a possession, should be the occupier of that particular building. The building should be on the agricultural land, or in the immediate vicinity. That is, it should be having the same boundary. They should be touching each other. That is, the land and the building are exactly alongside to each other. So the word used over here is immediate vicinity of land. Third is the land, that is the building, should be used for the dwelling purpose, that is residence purpose, or as a storehouse, that is warehouse, or it should be a let out building that has been provided on land. Next part is the land must be assessed to land revenue or local rates. As I told you, as we are living in city, we are paying municipal taxes. Similarly, if there is any kind of agricultural land, it should be assessed to the land revenue. If not, then it should not be situated in the urban area. That is, it should be outside urban area. Now, for that, we need to understand what is urban area. So I explained you guys in the last lecture in detail. We are living in Surat. So we are under the jurisdiction of SMC, Surat Municipal Corporation. In this particular case, if the population of that particular area, that is Surat, is from 10,000 to 1 lakh rupees, then a distance up to 2 kilometers. If the population of the area is up to 10 lakh, then the distance is up to 6 kilometers. If the population of that area, which is a practical situation in Surat, about 10 lakh, then I need to consider distance of 8 kilometers. How this distance is calculated? Aerially, that is air distance, airspace. Fine. What we need to interpret, for example, I am having agricultural land outside Surat. Fine. So my boundaries end. So in Surat, what is the population? So I am will be saying that it is about 10 lakh. As a result of which I need to consider 8 kilometer. So जहाँ पे मेरे सूरत की boundary खत्म होती है, I need to measure aerially 8 kilometers from there. If my agricultural land is falling under that area of 8 kilometers, it is said to be inside urban area. To be the part of this particular definition, my agricultural land is supposed to be outside the agricultural area. So in case of Surat, after the boundary of Surat ends, I need to go further 8 kilometers and my land should be situated outside those 8 kilometers. I hope you are getting it. Fine. पहले तो सूरत की बाउंड्री है, वहां से I am measuring 8 kilometers. My land should be situated outside those 8 kilometers also to be termed as an agricultural land. I hope I am clear with the definition. It is written over here, which we have discussed in detail in the last lecture also. Now let's move ahead. Once upon a time, a short question was asked for 2 marks. Give examples of agricultural incomes or give examples of non-agricultural incomes. Since it will be a 2-mark question, so we are going to write at least 4 points. So I have mentioned 4 points over here. Let's see first examples of agricultural incomes. The first example written over here is rent for agricultural rent received from the tenant. As I told you guys in the definition also, I am having the agricultural land. What I have done, I have provided that land on rent to some tenant. The rent income that I am receiving from that agricultural land will be my agricultural income. Second is income from growing flowers. What I am doing, I am growing flowers on my agricultural land and I am selling that particular flowers. So whatsoever income I am receiving by this is also part of agricultural income. Third is income from sale of replanted trees. What I'm doing, I'm replanting the trees and I'm selling those particular trees. Fine. So any income which is being earned out of that also will be the part of agricultural income. Fourth is fees collected for allowing cattle to graze for forest lands. For example, I'm having an agricultural land. I'm not cultivating basically anything there, but there are certain crops which are being grown over there. What I'm doing is there is a small cattle herd which is being residing alongside me. What he wants is he wants that his cattle should enter my premises and should graze. That is, they should have their food out of the crops that are being growing on my particular farm. Now what I'm doing is I'm asking for fees from him to allow his cattle to graze. As a result of which again the income is being derived from my agricultural land only. It is the income from the agricultural it is an agricultural income. As a result of which, what we are supposed to do over here is you are just supposed to remember any 4 names. When you will be getting the books, there are n number of names which are mentioned under this, but I have just written 4 easy examples which will be easier for you guys to remember. Fine. So these were the examples of agricultural incomes. Let's move. Which income which look like they are agricultural income, but they are actually non-agricultural income. So we need to remember these 4 points. First is royalty income of mines. For example, I am having agricultural land. I am digging that land and it is a mine. Fine. Mine means a place from where I am getting certain minerals. Now what I have done is I have entered into a contract. I have given my particular mine, that particular land to someone else. And I have made a contract. Whatsoever amount of minerals they are digging outside, they are getting, they are supposed to pay certain percentage to me. So again, I am getting royalty from that particular thing. But this, though it is being derived from the agricultural land, it is not going to be the part of my agricultural income. As a result of which, any royalty income that you received from mining is not a part of agricultural income. So it is a non-agricultural income. Second point I've written over here is income from poultry, fisheries, etc. So any kind of activity which is not directly related to agriculture, that is fisheries industries, poultry industries, are not going to be your agricultural income. Income from supply of water for irrigation purpose. What I'm doing is I'm supplying water to various agricultural farms. Fine. My main business is supply of water, not of agriculture. Fine. As a result of it, this is also non-agricultural income. And last is income from sale of earth for brick making. What I want is I want to make bricks. So what I'm doing is I'm selling soil. I'm selling that particular clay particles from my land. Again, the main purpose is making of brick, not farming. As a result of which, this is also non-agricultural income. Friends, I'm just giving you 1 minute. I would just request you to read all the 8 names. 4 of agricultural income, 4 of non-agricultural income. Try to memorize the same, because if a short question comes to you, you can easily answer the same. Well, friends, I hope I'm clear with the examples that I have mentioned over here. Let's move ahead to the last part of this slide. When agricultural income is taxable. आप बोलोगे सर आपने एग्रीकल्चरल इनकम पढ़ा तो लिया, बट नाउ द क्वेश्चन अराइजेस, सर हाउ टू कैलकुलेट टैक्स ऑन एग्रीकल्चरल इनकम, whether it is taxable or not. Let us know that. So the answer is it is exempt under section 10 subsection 1. So basically, the agricultural income is exempt under section 10 subsection 1, which basically means no tax is being charged on the agricultural income which is being earned. However, there is one important point which is written over here. It is taxable when. So there are two conditions which are mentioned over here, which says the income is taxable if 2 points are being satisfied. First point is agricultural income exceeds rupees 5,000. If your total agricultural income that you are earning from this business is exceeding 5,000 rupees, that is your first condition. And second condition is non-agricultural income exceeds your basic exemption limit. Now here I have used one more word. What is basic exemption limit? So to understand you guys, basic exemption limit means the minimum amount of income which is not taxable under the Income Tax Act. For example, as of now, the minimum limit of your income which is not taxable to tax, the maximum amount is 2,50,000. So if you are earning any income about 2,50,000, you are taxable. Fine. As a result of which, what is the basic exemption limit? As of now, it is 2,50,000. So if my total non-agricultural income, that is income other than agricultural income, exceeds 2,50,000, so my second condition will be fulfilled in that particular case. So in crux, what I need to remember is I need to remember two particular conditions. First, my agricultural income is more than 5,000, and second, my non-agricultural income exceeds the basic exemption limit. If both the conditions are being fulfilled, then my agricultural income is going to be taxable. So what you guys are supposed to remember is generally agricultural income is exempt under section 10 subsection 1. But if it is fulfilling these two criteria, that is my agricultural income exceeds 5,000 rupees and my non-agricultural income exceeds the basic exemption limit, and in this particular case my agricultural income is going to be taxable. I'm just giving you 1 minute. I request you all to memorize this point. Well, friends, I hope you are clear with this. So we are supposed to remember only 2 points, that if two conditions, both the conditions should be satisfied. So I have bold and highlighted the word and. That is, your agricultural income is exceeding 5,000 rupees and your non-agricultural income is exceeding basic exemption limit. I explained you guys what is basic exemption limit. If this question comes for 2 marks, your answer is going to be the amount of income which is not taxable. Fine. So, for example, the tax rate that I'm going to discuss in the next lecture. As of now, the minimum amount that is taxable, if it exceeds 2,50,000. So up to rupees 2,50,000, if you are earning any kind of income, it is not taxable under Income Tax Act 1961. So as of now, for a normal citizen, your basic exemption limit is 2,50,000. So conditions are agricultural income exceeds 5,000 and non-agricultural income exceeds basic exemption limit. That is as of now 2,50,000. If both the conditions are satisfied, then your agricultural income is going to be taxable. But in other cases, it is going to be exempt under section 10, subsection 1. So friends, this is all about agricultural income topic. So if a short note comes for 4 months, like write a short note on agricultural income, what you are supposed to do is, first of all, we are going to explain all these 3 points in detail. Then you are going to write examples, and at the end you are going to state how it is going to be taxable. I hope this topic is clear. I'm again reiterating the same thing. Friends, do see the last year question papers. You will come to know how important this topic is for your examination. Let's move ahead to again the most important part. Again, there is a one question for sure out of these 3 points that we are going to study. They may ask all the 3 points in the form of difference, or they can ask any one particular point in a form of short note. Let's see what is it all about. Now we are going to deal with 3 important words which are having only the difference of word, but they are going to lead to many differences. As we are going to study the same, we'll understand. What I'm going to request you is, rather than learning these short notes individually for all 3 of it, we are just going to learn this particular slide in form of difference. So even if a short note comes, like write a short note on tax planning, you are just going to write all the points which are mentioned on this slide. So what we are going to deal with is tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. Fine. There are 3 different words that we are supposed to remember: tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. Let's see what is it. We'll see point wise point so that it becomes easier for you to understand. First point is whether it is legal or illegal. For tax planning, it is legal. Tax avoidance is legal, but tax evasion is illegal. So the first point, it is clear that tax planning and tax avoidance are legal, but tax evasion is illegal. Second is ethical and unethical. Now, first of all, let me clear out what is ethical and what is unethical. For example, you are writing your examination. You know that copying in exam is not right. Fine. So basically, if you are copying, then you are doing something which is unethical, against the normal moral values. But if you are not copying, you are doing ethical act. In short, what I want to say is something that is morally correct, which the idea behind which is correct is known as ethical. Something which is morally incorrect, आपको लगता है कि ये चीज गलत है, नहीं करनी चाहिए, तो उसको हम क्या कहेंगे? It is unethical. So in this particular point, we are going to understand tax planning is basically ethical. You can see over here, tax planning is ethical. Tax avoidance is unethical. Legal hai, it is legal, but it is unethical. So lawfully, there is no harm in doing tax avoidance, but actually, morally, it is wrong. So it is unethical. And tax evasion is both. It is illegal and it is unethical. So from these 2 points, we can easily make out what is tax planning? Something for which law says yes, you can do it. And ethically, that as a right citizen, as a true citizen of a country, is it ethical? It is right to do it? Answer is yes, you should do it. So basically, tax planning is something which we are supposed to do, which is legal as well as ethical. Second is tax avoidance. It is legal. It is not legally wrong, but morally, as a responsible citizen, we should not do this. As a result of which, it is unethical. So tax avoidance is, though it is legal, it is unethical. Tax evasion, it is in nature illegal itself, as a result of which वो गलती है, it is illegal and it is unethical. Next is no intention to defeat the legal spirit. Means whatsoever is written in your Income Tax Act, I am having no intention that by doing tax planning, I am going to defeat the spirit which it was written. For example, in Income Tax Act, it is written that if you are investing something in form of tax saver FD, you can deduct that expenses from your total income. For example, I am having a total income of 5 lakh rupees. I am investing 1 lakh rupees in tax saver FD. So what I'm doing is basically income tax ne bola hai, you can take the deduction, and I am taking the deduction. So I'm not doing anything with the intention to defeat the legal spirit of the Income Tax Act. So whatsoever I'm doing is I'm just planning my tax lawfully in an ethical manner. Now, what is tax avoidance? The third point written over here is the intention is to defeat the legal spirit. So basically what you are doing to do in tax avoidance is the things that are written in the income tax act, you are going to do the same thing. But you know, the intention with which it was written, you are not following that particular intention. You are well aware. Whenever some law is written, there are chances that in certain provisions, the law can be interpreted in two ways. That is a right way and a wrong way. So what you are doing over here is, you are reading the law, you are following the law. But you know you should not do it in another manner. But what you are doing, you are implementing the wrong way. होता है ना कई बार, there are double meaning of a same thing. So what you are doing, you are not taking it in the right sense, you are finding out the loopholes and you are going to take the advantage of that particular loophole. What you are doing, your intention is to defeat the legal spirit. So this case is of tax avoidance. I hope you are clear with what is tax planning and what is tax avoidance. In tax planning, you are doing it legally, it is ethical, there is nothing wrong, you are having no intention to take the advantage of the loophole in the law. It is tax planning. But what is tax avoidance? It is legal, but at the same time it is unethical, it is morally wrong. Because what is your intention? Your intention is to find the loophole in the income tax act and to take the advantage of the loophole. So you are trying to defeat the legal spirit with which the act was enacted. And tax evasion, as I said, वो तो पहले से ही गलत है, as a result of which the intention is to defeat the legal spirit. Next point is, by taking legitimate benefits of the income tax law. Means I told you what I have done is, I have invested 1 lakh rupees in tax saver FD and I have taken the benefit of this same. So what I am doing is, I am doing only the lawful benefits which are being offered under the income tax act. Here what I am doing, as I said, I am taking the benefit of the loopholes of the law. I am finding out something which can be wrong, which is loophole, and I am going to take the benefit of this same, and it is known as tax avoidance. What is tax evasion? Misstatement or falsification of account. My sale was 1 lakh rupees, but to save tax, what I am doing, I am showing it as only 60,000 rupees. So I am stating something wrong. I am stating something false in my accounts, in my expense, or in my income. No litigation in courts. If I'm doing something known as tax planning, can the income tax department file a case against me? Answer is no. If I've done something which is known as tax planning, I have not done anything wrong. So there cannot be any litigation against me. But if I've done something which is known as tax avoidance, then income tax can file a suit against me. It can lead to the litigation in court. Tax evasion to hai galat. It is definitely going to lead to the litigation in court. Any penalty or prosecution? Answer is no in this particular case, because जो भी किया है सब legal है. In tax avoidance, again, there is no penalty or prosecution, basically because you have not done something illegal. You have done something unethical. Penalty arises when you are doing something illegal. So there would be a penalty only in tax evasion. Now, tax planning. It is good for national development society because it creates employment. We are going to deal with the objective of tax planning, so I am not taking it as of now. Tax avoidance and tax evasion, both are evil for nation or society. That is, it is bad for the nation or the society. What does tax planning promotes? It promotes professionalism and strengthens the economic and political situation. What you are going to do is, you are going to take a note of what is written in Income Tax Act, and you are not going to do anything which is immoral, unethical, or illegal. As a result of which, you may have the professional knowledge, or you are going to consult some professional, as a result of which professionalism is going to be promoted. As well as, if you are not doing anything wrong, you are genuinely paying the taxes, you are directly strengthening the economic and political situation of the country. What does tax avoidance leads to? It encourages bribery and weakens the economic and political situation. And the same cases with tax evasion. If you are doing something wrong, you are knowing that you have done something wrong, then but naturally to hide that particular part, you are going to offer bribe to various authorities so that your case do not comes out. As a result of which, tax avoidance or tax evasion is leading to bribery. And the last part is, it is planning before tax liability arises. When I am going to do tax planning, well in advance before my tax liability arises. For example, as of now, we are into the current year of 2020-21. I know that I am going to earn X amount of income. I can easily estimate what I am going to earn during the entire year. Accordingly, I am going to find out what is written in the Income Tax Act, where can I invest so that I can take a deduction of the particular thing. So well in advance, before government asks me to file the return after 31st March 2021, well in advance from now, I'm going to plan that where should I invest so that my tax liability reduces. So tax planning is basically done before the tax liability arises. Tax avoidance is basically then before the tax liability arises, because when you are doing something wrong, knowing it to be the wrong, but you do it before your liability arises. But tax evasion basically involves avoidance of payment of tax. So basically it is then after the liability of taxes arising. You come to know that you need to pay 50,000 rupees as a tax liability. Now you don't want to pay those 50,000 rupees. So what you are going to do is you are somehow going to adjust, you are going to falsify your accounts, as a result of which your tax liability decreases. So basically, tax planning, tax avoidance are done before the tax liability arises, but tax evasion is done after the tax liability arises. Now to cut the entire slide short, what I'm saying as of is it a simple thing that whenever you are writing the answer, just remember what I'm saying as of now, then it will be easier for you to bifurcate between these three terms. Firstly, let's take tax evasion. That is the last part. I'm highlighting that. What is tax evasion? Something which is illegal. लॉ में जो कहा है मैं वो नहीं कर रहा हूँ. It is illegal. Secondly, it is unethical. I am knowing this is wrong. Still, I am doing the same. What is my main purpose? टैक्स की चोरी करना. आई एम इंटेंशनली यूजिंग दिस वर्ड. टैक्स की चोरी करना is known as tax evasion. Second, let's come to tax avoidance. I am highlighting that word over here, tax avoidance. First point is it is legal. Whatsoever I am doing as per what is stated in Income Tax Act in 1961. But what I'm doing is basically unethical. I know जो भी मैं कर रहा हूँ, it is not morally correct. As a responsible taxpayer, as a responsible citizen, I should not do it. But still, I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm finding out the loopholes in the existing act, and I'm taking advantage of the loopholes. This is basically tax avoidance. What is tax planning? It is legal. Whatsoever is stated in the act, I'm doing the same. It is ethical. That I'm not trying to nullify the legal intention. I want to follow each and every rules which are being stated in the Income Tax Act. तो जो गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है मैं वैसा ही करने जा रहा हूँ. It is known as tax planning. So I hope you are clear with the difference between what is tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. Being one of the most important question from this chapter, I would just request you to go through this entire slide and post your queries in the Google Classroom, if any, so that I can elaborate more on that particular point. I'm just giving you 1 to 2 minutes, and I request all of you to kindly go through the entire slide, because one question from this is definitely going to be asked in your examination. Well, friends, I hope you have taken a due care of the points which are stated over here. Please, friends, be clear in your mind what is tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. Let's move to the last part for today's lecture, objectives or aims of tax planning. Why I should do tax planning? Why I should follow each and everything which is written in the Income Tax Act and should try to reduce my tax liability only by legal means. What are the objectives? Let's study that. The first upfront objective is, of course, reduction of tax burden. I know that if I'm going to invest in certain places which are being written in Income Tax Act, I can claim deduction of those particular income. As I give you the example, if I'm earning the income of 5 lakh rupees a year, out of which I'm investing 1 lakh in tax saver FDs, fixed deposit. So I can take legitimate deduction of that particular point, as a result of which I need to calculate my tax liability only of 4 lakh rupees rather than 5 lakh rupees. Second is productive investment. Productive investment means basically all the avenues where the government has offered you deductions under Income Tax Act 1961 are the one which are going to lead to the credit creation and economic growth of the company. For example, what I'm doing is I'm investing in the tax saver FDs. I'm investing in the life insurance premium. I'm investing something for higher education. If I'm purchasing some loans, I can get a deduction for this. And in short, what government wants to do is government wants to give momentum to the economy, as a result of which whatsoever I'm investing is actually going to help me out as a citizen of the country. As a result of which it is in turn turning out to be my productive investment, the benefit of which I am going to get in my future. Third is, as I told you, healthy growth of economy. What areas I'm investing are going to directly boost the economy. Next is economic stability. Economic stability basically talks about there should be a proper money supply in the market. The money supply should not be less, should not be more. If I am properly planning my tax and I'm going investing, so what is going to happen as of now is the amount of money that I was having is going to flow into certain investment, as a result of which various sectors, for example, I take the example of the 1 lakh rupees bank FD. So what I have done is जो पैसा मेरे पास रहने वाला था, I have passed on that money in the name of investment to the bank. What bank will do with that money? Bank is going to give that money as a loan to earn income out of it. So again, the money goes to certain sector of the society. Suppose a businessman. So the money that I would have nothing done with, I have invested with the bank. What bank has done? Bank has forwarded that money in form of loan to some businessman. Businessman is doing the business, giving employment, and as a result of which that money will go as a salary to someone else. In short, what I want to prove by this point is the money flow in the economy begins if you are doing some productive investment as a result of tax planning. So again, tax planning helps you to bring economic stability in a country. Next point is reduce tax disputes. If I know I am doing everything correctly, and if the income tax department also knows that I am doing everything correctly, then the collision, that is the issues, disputes between me and income tax department are gradually going to reduce. Why? Because both of us know that I am not doing anything which is wrong, as a result of which they are not going to issue any notice because I have not done something wrong. So the cases, the hearings, the appeals, the amount of that is going to reduce, as a result of which we can have a transparent taxation system in our country. Last is compliance with the laws. It is most important point. If we are living in our country, we need to abide by each and every laws which are prevalent in our country. As a result of which, being a responsible citizen, it becomes our duty that we comply with the laws which are timing in force in our country. So basically, friends, these six are the important objectives, aims of tax planning. Now, how the question is going to come is basically like they may ask you, write a short note on tax evasion, short note on tax avoidance, short note on tax planning. Or the question may come like, what is tax planning? Explain in detail the objectives or aims of tax planning. Or they can ask you, write the difference between tax evasion or tax avoidance, tax evasion and tax planning, or any two of the combination. In short, what I want to say is, out of the entire chapter that we have done, there are three most important questions which you are definitely going to come across in any of the VNSU papers you take. Those are, first is the definition of the person, second is the agricultural income, and the third is this topic, that is tax planning, tax evasion and tax avoidance. I hope you are clear with all the topics that we have covered till date in our previous lectures as well as the current lecture. For today, I am just going to take a brief thing on this particular point. The heading read as what is gross total income and what is total income. In the initial lecture of syllabus that I took is, I have made you learn one thing. There are income from 5 different sources. So how many heads of income are there? There are 5 different head of incomes. So it is written over here. Those 5 heads were, first is income from salaries. Second is income from house property. Third is profit and gain from business or profession. Fourth is capital gains, and fifth is other sources. I'm not going in detail because we have covered this entire point in our introductory lecture. That was when we were discussing the syllabus. As of now, what is my main purpose is, if the question comes across, what is gross total income? You are going to write addition of income received from all the five heads of income, from all the five sources of income, is known as gross total income. So what you are going to do practically is you are going to add income that you are receiving from any of the sources. For example, let's my example. I am receiving salary from the college. So I'm going to write the amount in this column. I'm not having any house property in my own name, as a result of which I'm not earning any income out of this. So I'll put a dash over here. I am doing any business? Answer is no. As of now, I'm not doing any business. Again, I'll put a dash over here. Have I sold any capital asset from which I have income? I have earned income in this year? Answer is no. Again, a dash. Am I having any other income? Yes, I'm having a FD with bank, so I'm earning interest income out of it. So what I'm going to do is, it is not necessary that you are going to earn income from each and every sources. But whatsoever sources you are having the income, for example, in my case, as we discussed, I'm having income from salaries, I'm having income from other sources. So I'm going to add this to income, and the total income will be known as gross total income. In short, whatsoever answers come after adding your income from all the five different sources, it is going to be termed as gross total income. Now, moving ahead, let's I have done deductions under section 80C to 80U. I'm not going in detail as of now because it is not a part of your syllabus basically, but just to give you the rough idea, what Income Tax Act 1961 is saying, if you are incurring any kind of expenditure, if you are investing anywhere, which is being stated from section 80C to section 80U, there are many sections which come in this particular origin. If you are doing any expenditure, for example, if you are donating to some approved institution, then you can claim deduction from the same. If you are paying anything in form of mediclaim premium, you can claim deduction of the same. If I'm investing in any tax saver FD, I can claim deduction for the same. If I am repaying my educational loan, the interest amount can be taken as a deduction. If I am doing, I am earning any kind of royalty income, it can be deducted, which is again stated in any of this section. In short, what I want to say is, if you are expending something, if you are investing something where the areas which are being specified under section 80C to 80U, government says you can claim a deduction of it from your gross total income. So what was my example? Let's repeat my example. For example, I am earning 3 lakh rupees from salary. What I am going to write over here, 3 lakh. In the three heads, 000, I am having bank FD out of which I am earning interest of 2 lakh rupees. So what I am going to write, 2 lakh over here. So what is the total? 3 lakh, 000 and 2 lakh. So the total is going to come as 5 lakh rupees. So what is my gross total income? 5 lakh rupees. Now what I have done, I have invested 1 lakh rupees in a tax saver fixed deposit. So what I am going to do is, as per Income Tax Act, I am going to write 1 lakh over here. So now my gross total income was 5 lakh rupees, of which I am going to deduct 1 lakh rupees. As a result of which, what is my residual total income? Amount is 4 lakh rupees. This 4 lakh rupees is going to be known as total income. So the main concept that I want to explain from this particular table is what is gross total income and what is total income. So what is gross total income? The total of five heads of income is known as gross total income. What is total income? If I deduct all the deductions from section 80C to 80U out of the gross total income, it is known as total income. With this, I guess you are clear with this particular topic. So now it's your favorite time. That is the time to test your knowledge. The rules remains the same. I'm going to give you 30 seconds for each question. You are going to note down the correct answer for each question. After completion of all the 5 MCQs, we are going to discuss the correct options. I hope you are ready with this particular thing, and your time starts now. Well, friends, I hope you are ready with your answers. So let's check them. The first question was casual income is taxable at a flat rate of, we have learned this. Now, correct answer is option C. It is taxable at 30%. Correct answer is option C. Second question, deemed dividend is defined under section. We have seen 5 different clauses A, B, C, D, and E. Deemed division was the last one. As I told you, it is not actually dividend because it is a loan or advance which is given to specified shareholder. So we name it as a deemed dividend. So the correct answer is option D, section 2, subsection 22, clause E. So the correct option is option D. That is the last option. Third question, tax desk is legal but unethical. We studied tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion, of which there was one point, tax avoidance, in which I told you that it is legal. There is nothing wrong legally, but it is unethical, which is not correct morally. As a result of which, the correct answer of this is option B, tax avoidance. Fourth question, misstating income, that is stating your income in a wrong manner. मैंने earn किया था profit of 1 lakh rupees, but I am showing it as 70,000, which is known as misstating income. Is an example of tax. Answer is option C, tax evasion. It is doing something wrong, doing something illegal. So the correct answer is option C, evasion. Last question that we discussed just now. The total income of 5 sources is called, it is known as option A, gross total income. We have just studied 2 terms, so don't get confused. The total of 5 head of income is gross total income, of which I am going to deduct deductions under section 80C to 80U, and finally I am going to get total income. Question here was just what is the total income of 5 sources? So the correct answer is option A, gross total income. With this, friends, I end today's lecture. I hope all of you have got a good understanding of all the topics that we have covered over here. I'm repeating once again, friends, 3 important questions that are most likely to be asked from this chapter are definition of the person, that is classifying into different categories. Second is agricultural income. And third is the topic of tax planning, tax avoidance, and tax evasion. I thank you all for your patient listening, and I hope to see you soon in my upcoming lectures. Thank you, friends, and have a great day.